Now that it's looking like Trump is going to, as he's been threatening to do all along, start sending migrants, even some Europeans, scandalous, I guess we're okay with it if it's not migrants from Europe, to Guantanamo Bay, let's do a quick history lesson on how the hell the U.S. has control of Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. If you remember from your U.S. history class, 1898, the Spanish-American War, Teddy Roosevelt charges up San Juan Hill. Bully. The more cynical interpretation of that war is that the Cuban people had been fighting for their independence from Spain for decades, and they were actually kind of on the verge of winning. And the U.S. is watching going, uh-oh, well, we want to have a say. We want to have some sort of informal control over Cuba. So we kind of swoop in, right? We blame the main exploded, whatever. We go and swoop in, we fight for a few months, and then because we won the war, we now call it the Spanish-American War, the Cuban people call it the Cuban War for Independence, we then get to have some control over the peace. And within that, we really graciously help the Cuban people write their constitution for them. And by that, I mean we force them to insert things into their constitution that give us preferential treatment, like forever. One of those is infamously the Platt Amendment. And basically the message of the Platt Amendment is like, hey, we respect the independence and the sovereignty of Cuba, and we respect it so much that if it's ever being threatened, we, the United States, will invade Cuba to protect its sovereignty. Which is like, what? But another thing that we get is we get a guarantee of a naval base on the island of Cuba, and that's where we end up with Guantanamo Bay. It should be noted that according to Article 2 of this lease agreement, which was an indefinite lease agreement, basically saying the U.S. is going to lease Guantanamo Bay from Cuba forever as long as we want it. According to Article 2, it says the U.S. may occupy, use, and modify the properties to fit the needs of a coaling and naval station only. Keep in mind, it's not until 2002 that Guantanamo Bay becomes a military prison post 9/11. Obviously, since the 1959 Cuban Revolution, the Castro regime and then its successors have been protesting the U.S. presence on the island of Cuba, but there's not really much they can do about it without risking, during the Cold War, right, like nuclear apocalypse. The U.S. has been paying its lease every year, and as far as I know, the revolutionary Cuban government has never cashed those checks. They're like, we want you out. It should be noted, too, that the Supreme Court in the 2008 decision Boumediene versus Bush has ruled that it is a constitutional right of any detainee in Guantanamo Bay military prison to challenge their detention using habeas corpus, but that's been mostly ignored. Essentially, Guantanamo Bay as a prison has become a place where you want to disappear people and never think about them ever again. It's also just worth noting that deporting someone because they are here illegally, they're here without documents, whatever, deporting someone has never included sending them directly to a prison. I feel like we've lost that part of the plot, and we're just talking about like why they're being deported. Deportation means you go back to your country of origin as a free person. It does not mean you get stuck in a prison and languish for the rest of your life.